And we are VIMTV Velocities in Music. Hello guys, thanks for watching. Today we are going to review a new album in 2011 by a guy named Tim Hecker. And his album is called Ravedeath 1972. Now when you hear the name of an album is Ravedeath 1972, you're a little intimidated. At least I was when I was scoping this album out for our schedule. And I didn't know what to think. I saw that people have been buzzing around the web about this album, that people wanted to hear about this. And so I looked into it. This is ambient, kind of a new age sound. But Tito, you were talking to me a lot and has some really good descriptions about this song. So so tell me about it.
Yeah, I'll get into the sound a little bit. I mean, this definitely is very electronic, very ambient, and but it has this like new age vibe to it. I mean, a lot of times people hear electronica and they think not at all.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, you don't get that at all. I mean, there's even a track called No Drums, which I think is really cool. But I'll get more into that kind of stuff in a sec. But the sound itself, it's very, very sharp. With this electronic genre, one thing I find is that when you have electronic sounds, as opposed to real instruments and things, you tend to get more separation in the frequency spectrum. Right. Because real instruments naturally have a little bit of everything in the frequency spectrum. But here, you know, because they're synthesized, they're made digitally for the most part. I mean, obviously there's analog synth stuff and electronic sounds out there too, but regardless, you're working from pure, signals and oscillators and sounds like that. They're naturally going to occupy one area of the frequency spectrum more. So you get that separation, I felt like, a lot more. But one thing that I really liked about this is that on first listen, if you're just listening to it in the background, it'll kind of wash over you and it'll all kind of sound the same. Right. But once you really start paying attention, there are tracks on here that are clearly even more minimalistic than others. And one thing that I like that he incorporates is almost an industrial sound at time, with some kind of grating, noisy sounds. But what's cool that he does with it, and I'm going to get into some production terms here that I'll do my best to try to make clear to people who aren't production nerds like myself, with these kind of grating, noisy, industrial sounds, what he does is he cuts off the high end. It's like he's putting it through a low-pass filter, so you only get, or even like a band-pass filter, so you're only getting like the low end or maybe the mid-range. You're not getting that high out of it. It's just kind of that soft, subtle mid-range that gives it that edge and attitude, and at times almost makes it unsettling and kind of like anxiety-driven, but it still is like soothing in a way because it doesn't have that noisy, high, sparkling end of the production. So I think that's really cool. Only other thing I want to mention before I pass it back over to you is that for an album that's minimalistic in sound like this, well, I mean, there is a lot of layers, but you can't deny that it is pretty minimalistic in what's actually there, and the mood that it's doing. Very powerful, but very focused, very minimal. But I like that he makes it into an album experience because, and not just with the way that the tracks flow, I mean with the way he has the tracks titled, and even with the artwork and the name of the album. Because if you just heard this album, just the music with absolutely no words attached to it, then, it'd be this experience and you'd be like, oh, that was cool. But really what puts it over the top for me and will make me give it a higher score, even though this doesn't affect the music, it affects the way I receive the music, is the names of the tracks, the way he has these themed. The name of the album is Ravedeath 1972. He's got these two tracks called Analog Paralysis 1978, Studio Suicide 1980, themes with the title of the album. Not only that, but the artwork. You look at the cover of the album, and it just fits the mood of this album so perfectly. And I can't get that image out of my head when I'm listening to it, and it's paired so well with it that you can't deny that. And I mean, we've even done a couple of videos, I don't even know if they're up anymore, where we talk about album artwork and titling your tracks and how important that is into the listening experience. And to me, this is the epitome of that.
Right. And he does such a good job of taking these longer pieces like In the Fog or In the Air or in Hatred of Music. There's those three main pieces that he splits into pieces and he puts them as different tracks on the album, so it helps the fluidity of the album as you flow through it and the conceptuality behind it, as Tom was just just saying. Now, one thing that really got me is just, this is mood. This is the definition of mood music, which is what leads me to think, and what Tom had mentioned to me before we were talking, before we turned on the camera, is that there's a lot of new age in here. And to me, what I kind of interpreted Ravedeath 1972 as is, here you have some piano, you'll have some horns, and what you would have is some very minimalistic new age music, but then it's like it's wearing this gigantic winter coat like George Costanza and in his Zortek coat or whatever it is, and here's this coat of distortion and all these electronic elements being placed on top of it, and that kind of combining of these characteristics of the sound is what makes this such an interesting listen. And then the production on top of that, the looping, the sampling, the other stuff that's all put together really makes this more of an intriguing listen. There's so many layers here to analyze, but yet it all comes off so smooth, so that it can be just background music, and you can just enjoy it for face value surface, and it will just be that. And if you choose to dig deeper and analyze what this guy's doing and how he's analyzing these different parts, and the crescendos and decrescendos and the songwriting behind it, like it's a quite an incredible experience. Now, is it something that I think that is going to be the most revolutionary album of all time? Of course not. There's not enough here to attach to. And when you compare it to other albums that have, these grand concepts and vocals and all these other things, I mean, this is just mood and some instruments and some production, and that's all you're getting here. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's limited by itself, by its own conceptuality. It's still a good album, and any album that we give, a good score to, I feel like you should, be at least intrigued to check out, or provide us a comment as why you don't like this and thought that it was wrong. Anyways.
At the same time, though, and you kind of alluded to this, but just to expand on it, I don't think this album is for everybody.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. We definitely really liked it. But at the same time, I mean, this is a sound that's not
inaccessible.
Yeah, not a lot of people are going to get into,
right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Just because a lot of music reviewers are giving this a good score doesn't mean you have to like it. And if you don't, it's not like there's something wrong with you. Maybe it just means that you're not into this style. However, I think that if you are inherently prone to enjoy this style of music, you probably will like this. I don't think we'll get a lot of people that say, I love ambient electronic music, but I hated Ravedeath 1972.
Agreed.
I don't think you'll get a lot of that, but it just depends on if you're into the style.
So I'm feeling an 81 on this one.
I am also going to go 81.
So I think this is, it's in that good range, good, check it out range. I mean, that's what an 81 is from us. So tell us what you guys think at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. What's your experience with this type of music? Do you guys like this? Do you want to see more albums like this? Do you wish albums focus more on mood and ambience and things like that? Because that is kind of a growing style right now, which is really exciting for people like us. So let us know what you think. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV. Thanks for watching, everybody. We are Moving Music Critique Forward.